All right, we will go into, I assume we want to have discussion on this, or should we maybe move that for later after we have the others present? I know you're trying to stick with the time schedule.
Yeah, we sure can, if that's appropriate. If we have it, like we said, any more questions for Daryl, we can email him, but if we want to have the discussion on direction, we can definitely postpone that to later in the meeting.
Yeah, I think we should probably postpone that and get the other topics through, and we can come back to this. I'm sure this is gonna be a multi-meeting discussion on something like that, so you guys okay with that?
I am.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, we will move on to E2, City Council Agenda Request. Deanna Austin, Serenity Circle Counseling. Thank you. Thank you for coming in. If you could just state your name and address for the record, please, and let us
Yeah.
know what we can help you with.
Okay, Deanna Austin at Serenity Circle Counseling at 201 Main in Isanti. And we have a handicap parking in behind our building, but we don't have one in front on Main Street. And our entrance is on Main Street, so it doesn't really make sense to have it in the back. So I'm just requesting that we are able to get one okayed up front. I do have photos as far as the ramp we already have up front, if you guys want to see those.
Sure, yeah,
Yeah.
That'll be great.
Please.
yeah. Thank you. Okay, so there is a ramp, so you can just drop down your handicap ramp right onto that, potentially, so that's good. Oh, I see. So are you suggesting that we put the handicap parking on Main Street or on Second there?
I need one in front. I don't have a preference.
Okay,
So one of the pictures shows that clients need to park in the back of the building, and they either have to walk or they have to roll, right? I don't currently have clients in a wheelchair, but we do have people with walkers, and it doesn't make sense for them to have to go all the way around the building.
sure.
And the back entrance is for employees, and that is where the therapy rooms are, so we can't change that.
Okay. Matt, with that, I see there's no parking on Second on that side of the street. Do you know what the reasoning is for that, or is that something that we could have a variance allowed for a handicap right there, so they can just get out right there? Is that something that would be okay, or is more background on that?
I would say it's got something to do with how wide the road is there, because there's a parking lot across the road, straight east of there.
Yep.
So I would have some concerns with cars backing out of that lot and having a parked car there. That would be one of my concerns there, and then possibly just the width of Second Avenue.
Okay,
I do know that there's no parking on Second, on either side.
Right.
So I was wondering if it was just not allowed on my side. The thing that's nice is if it was on Second, is there is the ramp on the sidewalk already.
right,
Versus right in front of the building, there really isn't right there where they'd be getting out of their vehicle, if that makes sense.
sure, yeah, on Second, it's a surmountable curb, on Main, it's not, so that is a good point. That's, I would like to see it on Second, but I don't know, logistically, we don't have Jason here to, tell us, but, what do you guys think, based on what you see?
I'd like to see it on Second myself, yeah. It's the most convenient spot for anybody who's gonna park
Right.
handicap, and I don't believe that spot would be taken probably but 10 hours a week maybe, and that would be the most. Just throwing a number out there. So, yeah, I think get Jason's opinion on that also.
Josie, did you have something to add?
Yeah, one thing I can add to this is that if it is designated already as no parking, be in ordinance, so possibly an ordinance change, but looking at the width of the street, give or take the aerial, it's approximately 23 or so feet. So I'm gonna guess that it is with the width of it. We do already have some handicap parking designated spots on Main Street, so it wouldn't be out of the ordinary to have one on Main Street. For sure, that has the width, that has the ability to add more. We have them over by the post office, right on Main Street there, on the same side.
Yep.
So it would be appropriate, I think, to have one added at that location if council wanted to add one.
The only issue I see, and don't get me wrong, I need one there regardless of which street it's on, is that, you can see on the pictures too, is where the curb is. They would literally have to go around the curb to get up to
see
the
that.
flatter spot. Like they just put a handicap spot in down the road from me.
Rockstead and Relics, yep.
But they have a little like ramp there to get on, do you know what I mean?
And
So-
actually, that's non-conforming as well. Our
Oh,
engineer did say
okay.
that when we put that handicap there, it technically isn't a true, because we don't have a ped ramp that meets standards for that, and he would probably give that recommendation that a curb cut with that full ped ramp would be recommended from an engineering standpoint, regardless of what road you put it on.
So that's chopping out this curb, making a little bit of a ramp right there in front of the building?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that's what he would recommend.
Because we have two options right now. We have around the corner, and then also, I'm at 201, I own 203, and then there's 205 and 207 that the church owns, and they have like a old driveway, so that would be another spot, but that's still down quite a ways. The other thing that I would, if I can just mention too, is that I have a handicap parking spot behind the building that I would like to take out, and that would also give us an additional parking space for people who aren't needing the handicap spot. So that would be helpful too, because our need has like tripled since the pandemic.
Is there a back door to that building that could be handicap accessible?
It doesn't work with what we do though, because it's all privacy back there. That's where the therapy rooms are,
Sure.
so it just wouldn't work.
And we would need to provide another designated handicap location if we did remove the one out of the parking lot, because I'm sure that that was with the business for establishing for parking ordinance.
You mean there need to be two, or what do you mean?
No, if we remove the one from your back
Yep.
side, there need to be another one provided.
Got it, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you can have the sign.
Jeff or Nick, any thoughts or questions?
I would prefer it to be on Second because the ramp comes straight down, but I think your best option is, right now, is Main Street. Even though it's not the preferred out of the two, but at least it's in front of your building.
Yep. And I'd be fine with either one.
I think I would prefer Main Street as well. I know, for me with my dad, it's actually better if you have a elevated curb like that and you can lower the ramp down. It gives you a better unloading angle. So some people might actually prefer that with that landing deck right there and the sidewalk. And then, like I've said in the past, there are some that have, rear exit. So the rear exit would actually work pretty good parking on Main and then exiting on to the handicap ramp and up. And I think it's easier for us to do that, but I think we should maybe get more of an answer from Jason on Second first. Otherwise, Main Street might be the preferred choice.
I like your approach too, to leave the curb, and then if it becomes an issue and you think it's an issue, maybe we come back and we could revisit that.
Yeah, like I said, it doesn't matter to me which side it's on, it's just a matter of my clients need it.
If we could, our city engineer, Jason Cook, will be available at our city council meeting at 7, which we likely will return to Cow after council. We can further this discussion, and Deanna would not need to be present. We can follow up
Correct.
with you after the committee has a chance to ask him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like we're all for it, so it's just layout, logistics, so. Awesome, thank you for coming in and providing those pictures, those are really helpful.
Yes.
All right, so we will probably continue that discussion later, probably after council. We will move on to E3, City Council Agenda Request, Chris Carroll, Commons on Whiskey Road. If you could please come up and state your name and address for the record, and then let us know what you got.
Chris Carroll, 308 Whiskey Road, the Commons. We own the building. So we got a couple ideas. We've been passing around a little bit. And I called because we realized we're gonna grade that section there, and we're connected to the city park right there. And our residents, and actually probably a lot of people, would like more access over to the park. So what we're noticing is our residents have to go up the side, over the sidewalk, back down, and all the way down to the park, right? So we were wondering if you guys would entertain an idea possibly of putting a bridge in there, closer to the park side, where even the people in the townhomes back there, they could actually, I don't know the lot line, like, I'm guessing it's probably like the tree line when I look at it, but we're thinking that if we could put a bridge somewhere and connect those lots, that people could use that whole park area that nobody uses, right? Because
Sure.
nobody gets to it, and then you'll be able to cross the bridge and then immediately get to like the park area, the slide area, so down further this way, not up this way. You know what I'm talking about, over the creek there? So we were thinking, if it's something that you guys would like us to look into, we would be willing to cover all the labor to put it up if the city was interested in maybe using some of the park dedication fees to supply the materials, because it'd probably be in your best interest, because you probably want to do truck stacking or something that's lifelong, rather than something to maintain. We don't want to maintain it or anything, we just would like to be involved in helping push along a bridge over there.
Okay.
I'm talking about, George.
So did you have an idea roughly maybe how far from the sidewalk? Where, are you talking like maybe middle of the property, or did you have like a site in mind or rough?
It's gonna be, well, I should have.
It's hard to measure, yeah.
We just talked about this like 3 days ago.
Sure.
And I'm trying to prepare it all, and I'm like, oh, we didn't do more than we should have, but basically it would be on the, and so it goes down like this, and then it crooks over. So it'd be right over on that end, move towards the,
Can I, you show me on this map where you're talking about?
The creek kind of lies, so the best would be on the other side of the Y to the south.
yeah.
So the creek goes this way, and I think it goes that way a little bit, so the best would be here, plus it'd still be visibly from
That's still,
Heritage, so it'd look cool.
that's
you
still
know,
within the
when you're
property?
driving. Pardon me?
That's still within the property?
Yeah. Trying to see where my apartment is. Yeah, and I believe it cuts this way a little bit, so that way would be kind of a bad location. It makes sense to be in here somewhere, closer to the park. And then you'd still be able to see it. It would kind of neat driving by to be able to see it, but that would utilize this whole property to people too.
Can I take a peek at what they're talking about? Where, right in here?
Creek is here, they're talking about right in there.
I mean, I guess we're not really particular.
Sure.
To where it goes.
Okay.
We don't really care where it goes, just the access that people would have. And I know that that sidewalk is super busy. I know kids and stuff walk on there and everything too. But it just seems like there would be more action at the park if there was more access to it, because it's not really.
There's that one chunk of land that just
Never gets used. Yeah. I didn't even know it was, we just recently found out that that was part of the city's property and that actually anybody can use it. We didn't even know we were telling people not to walk on it because we didn't know if it was part of the park or not. So that's where this all came about, oh, how about a bridge? So something to think about. We don't have to make a decision. We just wanted to give you a presentation about a couple of ideas. I don't really know what the next step is, but here, I got a couple more.
Sure.
So we're also, I read in the paper that you guys have raised gardens somewhere located at another park location here
Yep.
in the community. And wondering if we can move forward with this bridge idea, maybe there's a possibility that you could add some more things like that. I do think that engaging, I think we probably have over 100 people that will be living in that corner that may really enjoy it over there, being so close. And then my third idea was maybe some type of parking on maybe, it was just a brief, again, these are just brief questions. Maybe selling us a chunk of land so we could add more parking. Maybe we create an easement on the Heritage Drive Avenue there that they can pull in and you guys could have a parking lot. So there has to be parking for the park. I mean, we don't necessarily really want a parking lot, but if there could be an agreement of a slight easement to jut right into that parking lot, maybe we could get more people over at that park. So 3 ideas that we have on the table. So.
Okay.
That's all we had, so.
Okay.
I don't know what the next step is, what you do, but I can call Stephanie tomorrow, but I knew that I had to get it out in front of you guys to see, but we would like to do the bridge for sure,
Okay.
and anything else we could add to the park.
Sounds great. Thank you for that. I think there's some interesting ideas there. It's just, logistics. So, yeah, and then obviously money, upkeep, all those questions. But I appreciate you coming in.
The bridge would be the best thing.
Sure.
Okay.
Right. Makes sense.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you. We'll be in touch.
Pretty sure we discussed 2 of those items over there about getting a bridge and doing community garden for the townhomes over there. When I first got on council.
Really?
Brought that up. It
Okay.
was brought up, yeah.
Okay. I don't remember that one. I might have missed that meeting. Okay. I think it's a cool idea. So it's just a matter of,
Mayor and Council, is this something that you'd like to have staff add to the next park board agenda to further the conversation?
yeah, I did have a question on the memo here. I'm not sure if it's incorrect, but it did say they would like to donate their time and materials. Okay, sure.
We can negotiate.
Okay,
Yep.
that sounds great. Perfect. Yeah, I think add it to the park agenda, have them kind of hash out, maybe some ideas, and then we can discuss those things too.
The one thing that should be considered is even though some people may use it and not, they'll come across the yard, the grass, the property, we'll want to make sure that we give some ADA compliance to that bridge. So maybe that's coming off of Main Street sidewalk and coming up, and it could be lime egg to provide for wheelchair accessibility. We'll want to keep those things in mind as well.
Sounds good. All right, thank you for coming in, and great ideas. Okay, so we will move that to Park Board, and I assume we'll probably have another discussion on that. Do we want to have another discussion as Cal first, or what do you guys think? Just send it right to Park Board?
Send it to Park Board
Okay.
first.
All right,
Only thought was, just, when we had the heavy snow melt and flooding 2 or 3 years back, I can't remember if that had taken on a bunch of water too? If that would need to be consideration for putting a bridge there? I thought I remember that place getting pretty heavy and wet.
I'm not sure.
We would have to make sure that we take some things into account, and I think that this creek is on a larger plan of watershed that comes through the city, so there's possibly some interagencies that need to work on approving that if that was to move forward. But we would have to account for, usually the standard is a 100-year flood for high water marks for putting structures in. So that could all be things that could be discussed at Park Board.
Okay. Sounds good. With that being said, we'll move on to E4, Illuminate Isanti. So for this one, come on forward, whoever wants to be the spokesperson of the group, or however you want to do it.
Actually have some volunteers and all volunteers. That's awesome. Really awesome.
Thank you. Thanks.
So I'm Carla Anderla. I live at 312 Flintwood Street in Isanti. I'm a founding member of a new community group that we are calling Isanti Together. So I don't know how we want to do this to you. I mean, I could stand here, I could read this to you. I can let you read, I can answer questions.
That's an interesting question. There's a lot of information here.
Yeah, there
Maybe
is.
just give just a quick summary of.
We are very specific
Yeah,
about
yeah.
a lot of the things.
This
that
is
we-
good reading material for later,
Yes,
yeah.
Yeah, we did, we definitely were very thoughtful about what we wanted to see, what we wanted to have happen. Part of the things that we really wanted to look at was longevity. We didn't want to just plan for like this year. We wanted to plan for like at least 3 years, see consistency. We wanted to see consistency kind of going through. We did meet with Jessica and Stephanie and talk about like what is the minimum operation costs. Kind of figured it out at $20,000. So we kind of addressed that, how we were gonna maybe raise those funds, our steps for doing so. We have a funding request for the city, and that's all laid out here. If things go as planned, we plan to establish a 501c3 nonprofit organization through Isanti Together. And not only Isanti Together, we like the idea of being part of Illuminate Isanti in conjunction with the city, but we would also down the road like to do other events, so we don't want to just keep it as Illuminate Isanti. We're a small group of, there are 8 of us, 9 of us.
Nice.
We've made a lot of headway, including this grant, or not this grant, but this proposal. We've also gone out and talked to some of the business owners in the area, collecting promissory donations if this is decided to go forward through city council. We were already able to secure $3,400, I think it was, in promissory donations, and that was in a matter of 4 days. I believe last year there was, $9,000 raised, I believe. So we were able to get that much amount, and we haven't talked to, like, the bigger businesses and the presenting sponsors and things like that. Many of the people the business owners that we spoke to were very interested in contributing, but they were maybe hesitant because they didn't know if it was going to take place, wanted us to come back, or they just needed more time because we did only take like 4 days. But we need to know tomorrow. So many of them wanted more time. Many of them said, yeah, I can donate $100, but it'll probably be more than that, so come back to me, but I want to have time to look at it. So we have that started. I don't know what all I need to tell you all about. Is there something else I need to tell them specifically?
Thank you, thank you.
My first rodeo. Kim Martin on Fifth Avenue Southwest. We're very specific in the proposal on what we are looking at as far as what we feel our responsibility would be as a committee and what we feel the city's responsibility would be, like very specific, spelled out, So when you look at it, dates down to what displays, it's very specific.
So there's some information in here. What would be, if you were to assign, this is just the brass tacks, the real amount of time, if you were to guess, how many hours do you think Public Works would need to work with you guys on this? Or, I guess, I don't know how, there's some comment in
600
here.
hours, it says here.
Well, that's what we usually use, but I wasn't sure what our obligation would be exactly. It might say in here, I just haven't had a chance to read it all.
Right, it is.
Okay.
I don't know that we could put a number on the exact hours, because we
Right.
don't really know, but.
Sure.
We just have things, very specific things about when can we use the park? We would, obviously get permission for that and let them know and have that be available. We ask that the city workers put up the large displays. Obviously, they've got the boom and things like that, and they know how to do it. So we listed those large displays, what those would actually be.
Okay.
We asked that they would put the lights on the large pine trees. Again, they have the boom, put the lights on the amphitheater's roof and the lights on the pavilion or the picnic area, on that roof, anything that you're gonna need the boom for. But we're also not opposed to, if the Public Works can let us know, a week in advance, when this is gonna take place, we're not opposed to having volunteers there to help them do that. Volunteers can be untangling lights. They can be, checking lights and doing things like that to expedite it. And so we're also not opposed to being there to help facilitate that.
But I
Okay.
think some of these hours were determined by information we got from the city.
Right.
So we're just going by what
Sure.
Sure.
And then, of course, there's tear down. So it would be set up of that, and then it would be tear down of that as well. But we all know tearing it apart takes less time. So,
Right.
we asked that the city deliver the,
The containers?
the containers and all the displays and the little sheds, whatever the little hut things that were built, and just things that we wouldn't be able to deliver.
Sure.
But the vast majority of everything else, we were planning on getting the donations and organizing it and figuring out a game plan and getting the giveaways, doing all the advertising, getting the volunteers, organizing the volunteers, tearing down, setting up, manning it.
Okay.
And it would be in an open event like we had last year?
And that is our goal, is that it would be open and it would be free for the community.
Nick, you had a question?
Yeah, Matt, did you receive a copy of this?
I did, yes.
Off of the page 3 and 4, can you ballpark Public Works time for what they're requesting?
On page 3 or 4, you're talking about the decorating the trees, the gingerbread house, bringing the big stuff over there? Is that what you're referring to?
Transportation of all the stuff, picnic shelter, band shell lights, and then tree, snowman, starburst, angel wings, present, flagpole.
I foresee that to be, I mean, bringing stuff over there is not difficult. Building the big tree is time-consuming, because we have to put it all back together. The snowman is not as difficult. Bringing some of the stuff over there is just to bring it there is not necessarily a problem. The only consideration I have is decorating, the concern I have is decorating the gingerbread house, the big trees on the back, and the amphitheater. Those things took time to decorate them.
So, I mean, is it still half of the 720 hours that you'd be thinking, or is it not quite that much?
I'm looking at a minimum, I would say a minimum of 2 weeks, could be 3 weeks. The trees, to decorate the trees are really, it's to do it right, to put enough lights on there so that they really pop out. That took time.
2 weeks of how many people?
We had 3 to 4 people out there, I would say, consistently.
Okay, so that's about 320 hours?
Okay.
And if the trees are something that take the longest, I mean, we can certainly take a look at that. There are definitely other ways of illuminating a tree besides putting actual lights on it.
Sure.
Using floodlights to light up trees, especially when there's snow on the branches, is also a very beautiful effect. It's done in many events. We went to the Minnesota Zoo. Was it the Minnesota Zoo? They had their spooktacular, their pumpkin event, and they used floodlights to light up the trees. They just shine lights on them, and it was stunning. So if it is a very time-consuming thing, then we can definitely look at other options for that.
I like that, yeah.
Because it's not, having a few strands of lights on a tree isn't worth that many hours.
Right.
And we understand that. So it's not our intent to make it so that the city is enduring a lot of costs, where really our intent is to make it that the city is not enduring a lot of costs, and that it is volunteer led, and there's a lot of volunteer hours versus a lot of paid hours.
Sure, and that was the original intent. You know, I've said up here a bunch of times, I love this event and I want it to keep going, but just not at the cost of the taxpayers. But I think this is a great opportunity to sort of split that, you know, some of that time with the community and some of the costs with the community as well. I don't know if maybe we could assign, I don't know if this is totally unreasonable, could we assign like a number of hours that Public Works could put out, and then they just stop roughly around that time, and then whatever's out is what's out type of deal, or is that?
We certainly could, but Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, is part of the time in setting up the lights and the trees is Public Works untangling, pulling out the strands? Those are things that could be done by volunteers that
Sure.
really dramatically reduce that setup time. So if the lights were ready to go and detangled, and just having Public Works actually use the lull to put them up, I think that's probably less time. Would you agree?
I would say untangling, get everything out and ready to get set up. The other thing I want to just mention is that there's always repairs that have to be made to all the wire frames and stuff like that. Wires, they're broken. There's a lot of time spent with Public Works just making repairs to all the decorations that go out there. And I don't know what that might be, because it seems like every day there was somebody that was go to light something up and it wouldn't work, or they'd hang a strand of lights up and it wouldn't work. So I just
the
want to make
group
mention
is-
of that.
The group is willing to do that work, correct?
Yep. Yes, we are.
That does, I've seen Public Works do a lot of repairs, or, spend the time on one repair, figuring out what happened, and that would alleviate quite a bit of time, too.
Yep.
Have we ever looked into, I think it's been asked, but have we looked into leasing or renting the lull to this organization? Is that something that, I know obviously we'd have to sign off a liability waiver and all this stuff, but is that something that could even be potential?
I would have to look into that further. I know back in the day, we used to work with the chamber about putting downtown wreaths up on businesses. And that agreement that we had signed between both parties was it was best, instead of letting them use city equipment, and we didn't even have a lull at that time, but rented a lull, It was just better to have Public Works do it, who is properly trained to reduce that risk of injuries and such. My recommendation on it is if we're gonna partner with an organization, would be for city staff to put that up who's trained. Whether you want them to be reimbursed for some time, I would rather think that that would be in the best interest of the city versus to rent out our lull to them. If we were gonna have them rent something, it'd be best to go to Isani Rental.
Would that be something we could potentially allow them to do, is rent a lift and do some of that stuff? I'm just trying to think
We
like,
could, yeah.
Okay.
We could have that in part of the agreement, that they have the ability to use equipment on our property.
okay. I think it's great that you guys have come up with this. There's a lot to read, so we'll have to digest it, but I'm excited to, potentially partner with you guys on this, and I think it's great. Any other questions from y'all at the moment, or?
I'm optimistic. I mean, we went from just a couple people saying that they would like to try to put something together. We got 9 volunteers now. They're looking at between 50 and 60, and they have time to maybe hit that number. And I think that would be a really good number to be able to put it up fast, efficient, and everybody feel, and be more of a community-type effort. I love the idea. As far as cost, I mean, really, Public Works has a kind of a fixed cost. I mean, it's just a matter of having them find a time to be able to do it. And, any unforeseen emergencies or something that distracts them that they have to take care of during that time,
Absolutely.
could interfere with that. But I like the idea. I'd like to see this work somehow.
And we could also, we could even ask other businesses in the area that have the equipment.
Sure.
Maybe
Yeah.
they'd be willing to volunteer their time to help do that. Like, there were many of the companies that we went to that didn't just want to hand out a check. They wanted to be actively involved as well, so.
I don't know how Isani Rental is in doing donations, but they have one.
Yep, absolutely.
To maybe
Yep, there's a lot
donate
of
it,
businesses,
one
yep.
for a day or two, and, yeah.
I have a question and then another comment. For the repairs that would get done by the volunteers,
Yep.
would you be requesting, because we wouldn't be able to have the volunteers work within the police facility, which is where the equipment or the lights are stored?
Okay.
Would you be taking that with you to then repair at someone's garage and then bringing them out, have Public Works bring it to the park? Or how would that work for making the repairs of the lighting displays?
I'm not opposed to any of that. That would be fine. And I think it would have to be on a case-to-case, because some things could probably just be fixed right in the park, like as it's being,
Just something to
Put
keep in
together.
mind, and Chief Myers could speak more on that, but
yeah.
Yeah, just the repairs in the building, we would have to be accompanying them for that time. So it would make, but if you're not opposed to doing repairs outside, weather dependent, that, our back lot, we can make room for that too.
The amphitheater would be a great place too, to sort lights and string them out and check them, but weather permitting too, so. It sounds like you're getting an early start on it, so you should have a few weeks. If you have bad weather, still have some weeks to spare.
Right, that's kind of what we were thinking too, because you just never
Right.
know in Minnesota when bad weather is going to hit, so.
And then putting my finance director hat on, well, I'll have to dig in a little bit further. Kind of the request is doing a pass-through, but not, you wouldn't be a 501c3 for this year. I know that those things take time as well. I'll need to dig in further for that, to see how that could work before I could say that that would work. So just let committee know.
Can you tell me one more time how much you said you had in promissory donations?
I'm sorry, what was that?
You said you had some people who had promised donations. Can you tell me what that amount was again? Did you say 4,200?
3,400.
3,400?
3,400, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's in
I
4
didn't
days.
catch
We
that
got
the first
that.
time.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to state, we did meet with them, and I did encourage them just to lay out all of what they thought was their priorities, like pie in the sky things in here, and to be willing to negotiate. And so
Sure.
I think they're willing to do that, and I'm happy to see that they laid out everything that they wanted, because I think that's the best way to make sure that this event still is successful. And so we tried to give them all the information we possibly could about every little thing. And so I think you did a good job of putting it all together. So thank
You guys were very helpful.
I just had one question. Who would carry the insurance in case somebody gets hurt, or whether it's a volunteer or somebody in the park?
So the city would carry liability insurance regardless. If we had an agreement, we would carry, that's just how that would be. There are some organizations and agreements that we have, for example, with the Soccer Association, that they do reimburse the city of Isani for the liability cost of that. In this instance, I think that it would just be the city carrying that on, and it would just be the risk that was understood.
Okay.
And we do have it kind of documented in here that we would be willing to have our volunteers, especially during setup and tear down, sign a liability waiver.
Okay.
I also encourage that once we know what's going to happen, I think we have this process go through the special event permit process like everything else. And so
Yeah.
it's not looked at differently, but we can make sure we are crossing out, like covering those specific items as we go through also.
And then likely you would be able to get some kind of liability certificate that you could list the city of Isani as the additionally insured, just like for any other event.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, event insurance is fairly inexpensive, and what it would cover as far as group, you know, working with the Christmas lights and doing that sort of thing, I'm not sure how much of that it would cover, but those are the questions you can ask.
Right, and we're not opposed to do, like, looking into any of that kind of stuff. I just think, like, this year, it might be a little bit difficult to do that, since we don't really have anything. But, you know, if we could really make sure that we're really partnered well together this year, the city's taking on some things, we're taking on the majority of things, that would be the best for this year, but we can always examine things for the next years.
I see in here it says that you could use the community center for planning. Do you have any idea how many roughly meetings you might have? I mean, would that be every couple days during I'm just trying to get a rough idea.
Right, well, and it would be, we just thought it might be nice because as we decide, we grow, because right now we're 9, but we want to be able to put that out into the community that we want more volunteers. We just didn't want to get a lot of volunteers before we knew that we even really needed them. So we just wanted to be thoughtful about, like, we might need a large space to meet. But, I mean, right now, we're meeting weekly, but it also says in there that it would be pending availability, and that we would be responsible of, like, making sure that we're signed up to have it, so.
Okay,
Just thought it might be-
otherwise, another idea I have, we don't use this room in here very often, just for meetings, and you can, I know in the past, we've talked about using this for meetings, maybe this would be a better place, because this has never been, this is, 3 meetings a month? So otherwise, it just sits empty, so this might be a space too. I didn't know if you're set on the community center, but
No, we weren't.
it would have to be
no.
during business hours, but
Yep,
that's,
just a big space where
Sure.
we could maybe all meet. And it's very possible that we might even want to meet in the park sometimes,
Sure.
because it might be just a good idea to be in the location where you're going to be.
We do have a policy that does permit for organizations within the city of Isani to use this room, as long as it's during 8 to 4:30.
right, business hours. Okay, I don't know if that's an option, but maybe just something to think about.
So we wouldn't be able to do it between 8 and 4:30?
No, you would.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
not after.
Not after.
Which might be
not,
tough because everybody
Yeah.
works, but
Sure, yep, makes sense.
there's a bank, I think,
Well, there's
just
even
north of
Colburn's.
town. They have a nice conference room that they'll let the public use, and, well, Colburn's.
Yep, and even the bowling alley, yeah, there's lots of different options, so
Sure.
Okay,
not opposed to any and all.
Well, I appreciate all the time you guys have put into this so far. It's
I
good.
appreciate the follow-through, definitely. Yeah, it's good to see. And it means that the community wants it, and that's a big thing for us, so. Any other discussion? Otherwise, I mean, I would like to read all this before we make any decisions necessarily. But I think, we can come up with some sort of, maybe we set an hour limit, if that's an idea you guys like, or, I don't know, further discussion on it for the future. Where do we need to go from here? Do we need a decision or any sort of, go ahead, Kim. You're good.
We were kind of thinking about, Obviously, there's 7 pages there for you to look over, that maybe we could put something on the next meeting.
Sure. City
Give you
council
time to
meeting
look
or
it over, huh?
city council meeting or
Yeah.
committee of the
Or
whole?
I think city council meeting, to be honest with you, but I guess that's up to you guys. To give you time to look it over, and then if you have any questions, contact Carla or whoever. And then we weren't really looking for a decision today necessarily.
Okay.
Because it's a lot to
Yeah.
look at.
Sure.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I would request to put it on the next council or cow, whichever you guys prefer. Council is in 2 weeks, cow is in 4 weeks, so.
Council is fine. I know they're gonna need time to really start organizing and doing it, so next meeting's fine with me. Otherwise, they're waiting a month. And
We won't have
Goodness.
time to put together a full agreement by that time, just letting
Oh.
you know. But maybe from that meeting, then we'll outline that agreement at
For
that
the
time, and I'll
following 2
know what
weeks.
to add to it, and it can move forward at the next. But you
Sure.
could at least give them a good direction of
Sure.
what they're moving forward with.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Thank you, I really appreciate it. I'm excited for this, so.
Thank you.
All right. It is 6 o'clock, but there's no planning commission tonight, so we can just continue through on committee of a whole. Dang, iPad froze. Here we go. All right, thank you for coming in.
yeah, thanks, everybody. Really appreciate the time you put into it.
We will move on to E5, Isani Area Joint Operating Fire District JPA discussion.
All right, gentlemen, I know you wanted some fresh eyes on this. My second meeting to the fire board, they were looking at amending the current agreement. You probably have a copy of the blue line, or you've read it. You want to take over, Alfred, no?
I can try, I guess. I self-invited me to this meeting, but I thought it would be good to just be here to help explain what we're doing, if you guys didn't know. So yeah, we have a joint powers agreement that binds the city with 6 townships, and together you all form the Isani Fire District. A couple events led up to the fire board deciding that they would like to amend that agreement. In order for that agreement to be amended, there's a clause in it that states it must be unanimous. So all 7 owners of the fire district have to all agree to make any changes to it. So we currently have an agreement and 3 amendments. And one of the goals with this amendment is to do away with all of those different versions and just have one new, fresh amendment. So the red line is a version from 2019, 2020, when we first attempted this. We did not have unanimous support in 19 and 20, so we tabled it for future discussion, and now the fire board decided we should bring it back up and see if we could come to common ground with it. A few things have changed since that version was drafted, that red line version that's in front of you all. So we understand that there will have to be some changes to that draft, but it has gone through 3 different attorneys and our fire board in 19 and 20. And discussion-wise, we had a majority, if not unanimous. However, we couldn't bring it to a vote because we did not have unanimous support at a vote. So we feel it's a pretty good agreement. Yeah, absolutely.
What was the vote at that time?
It was 6 in favor and 1 township was opposed.
To do what exactly? That's where it
To
was.
amend it, to change.
Oh, just to make a basic amendment, whatever it was at that time. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Which township didn't want to go forward and why? What was the reason? Did they give a reason?
Yeah, it was Oxford Township, and they didn't support it because they, ununanimously, if that's a word. They didn't feel that it was in the fire district's best interest to hold people accountable for certain incidents at a bad time of their life. So an example is we respond to a fire scene and meet certain thresholds, criteria, and submit them an invoice for suppression fees. There's a lot of details behind that. There's a lot of thresholds that would need to be met, that could be met. But just in a whole, from a high elevation, they thought this is a bad time to be holding people accountable for this. We're a fire department and we should just absorb those costs. Other people on the fire board look at extremes. We have industry in our coverage area. We have a railroad. We have things that could really go wrong and accumulate a lot of cost to the rest of the fire board, fire district owners. And that is why they want to amend this, to try to protect them, to try to protect the person that's maybe far rural and living on a limited income from incurring increased costs on their taxes because the fire department's budget goes up because there was an incident at a manufacturing plant in the city or at a township out on the other end of the fire district. When we respond to those incidents and we incur costs, that comes out of our budget. If we can't pass those along to the responsible parties, that's on us. That's on me as a Bradford Township resident. That's on you as city residents to incur those costs. The entire fire board doesn't think that that's fair. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to go out and charge you if you have a fire that takes us 15 minutes to extinguish and we're back to the station in an hour. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to charge you for 35 guys and gals and 6 trucks being at your driveway. That's not what this means. This means if there's a train derailment and it spills flammable liquids and we are out there for 10 hours with our equipment pumping foam, then we're going to potentially hold the railroad accountable. And a lot of times, the railroad won't have a problem with that. They would expect that. People have insurance that would cover these costs. But the way we're structured right now, we can't pass those costs along. There's a few other things that they would like to fix. There's part of the agreement states that a quorum constitutes 3 of the 7 members. They would like to increase that to 5. So it would take 5 people in order to pass a motion that would spend our money. It doesn't mean that 5 people could change the agreement and change our structure, but it means that you couldn't just pay a bill with 3 yay votes. You would need 5 votes. And then there's also some language in there about collecting unpaid fire bills. So if we do pass it where we can bill, and we build out some criteria that, like a billing schedule, so that we would bill business XYZ for 10 hours of fire suppression and they don't pay, then it includes some language that offers us some tools to be able to collect that bad debt. Whereas in the past, we did bill for decades, and if people didn't pay their fire bills, the only tool we had was to continue to bill them. We couldn't use collections enforcement. So that was one thing that we wanted to clean up as long as we were amending this to include language to allow us to collect.
So I did have a question on that. You said that previously a quorum or deciding vote was considered 3. Typically, it's just a majority, so on a board of 7, you'd have a 4 vote. Why did you want 5 instead of 4?
So we don't have an even vote.
And
Then we wouldn't have a tie, sorry. Having an odd number would make sure that we don't ever have a tie.
is there 7 on the board, correct?
Correct. But if it's a quorum of 4,
Oh, I see.
then we could have a tie vote. So they rounded up instead of rounding down, and when this agreement was originally drafted, they rounded down to get an odd number. Whereas now they thought 3 isn't many on a 7-person board.
So that's,
Shocked.
that's just for the quorum. So if you had, say if something came through and you had three yays, or somebody made a motion and 3 people were in favor of it, would that 3 out of 7 pass it then, or you still have to have majority? I guess I'm a little confused on the way that was
So-
laid out.
If we had a meeting tomorrow and I presented financials to pay and only 3 of the 7 entities showed up, if those 3 voted in favor, those bills will get paid.
Okay,
What they want is to not even be able to
Hold the
consider it
meeting, you're
unless
right.
there's 5 of the 7 present.
okay.
And that's the way it should be, so
Right.
that most interested parties are there to be able to have their say on a bill should be paid or not. I was shocked that it was only 3 in the first place. I don't know how that even came about. What, at the beginning of the fire district, I'm thinking it was just hard to get people there, even at the meetings maybe, or?
Or was it only 5? Was it only 5 members back
Start with
originally?
5?
No, it's always been 7.
Okay.
And I don't know, I can't say why it was drafted that way originally. Really, it's not a concern to me. We don't have a problem getting people to the meetings. We don't have contests.
don't.
Very seldom, we don't have a unanimous support for paying bills or making a
I
motion.
agree.
We don't have a whole lot of contest in our meetings, so.
So the majority would still, so if you're just saying you have to have 5 to vote on something, correct? And the majority would still be the majority. It's not gonna be, it's not gonna depend on this 3 or 5 number at all. It's just still majority, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Just to give a little input on it, how I look at it is, us as a board, we represent the people and the majority rules, but in this case, it's one person from each city, so I think a more of a super majority should, in my book, approve most things, instead of a simple majority. Just my opinion. I don't know if I explained that right.
No, you did.
So where we're at right now is our chair asked that all entities bring this draft back to their boards and review it and hash it over and bring back suggestions to our draft, which we will then make. Hopefully we can get some consensus on what people want to do tomorrow night. And then we will decide also tomorrow night if we want to pencil in our requested changes to this draft and present it to our attorney to look over and make recommendations from there. So this round, we have not used our attorney yet, but it is obviously advisable that this gets routed through one or some attorneys to get their weigh in before we make something like this official. So I don't know if you guys have suggestions. Josie, if you do, I don't know where we're at with this. If you want to make suggestions and then send it through our attorney before you involve yours, I'm sure the city needs to involve your attorney with anything like this, whether our attorney approved it or not.
Correct, and we've used that in the past, that process. So was TD, is he still your?
Yep.
Yep, so he had, I think, worked with the board to draft the amendment. Our city attorney did review it, not to make structural changes to the agreement, to just make
Right.
sure that there was everything covered for liability on the city and specific language verbiage in the best interest of the city. That is what we did in the past, but we didn't task, just so everyone's aware, to have the attorney write it or come up with specific language in every section. It was just an overview of liability and
Right.
that kind of thing. I should mention, and at that time, he did agree with it. That red line draft that Al was talking about was something that, I think there was 2 language changes, and I can't remember now what section was in, but there was some minor changes that were made at that time, and those were made.
Rupi is the last name of another attorney. I believe he's the attorney for Athens. He also reviewed it and made quite a few changes, and then Peter Teedy, our attorney, is involved or was. And he is our current representative, so he would be involved this round as well, if it goes that far, which I would anticipate it to.
I have a clarifying question.
Yeah.
So on the Article 14 for the collection, you're talking about the intention being to go after industry or large commercial, billing those customers. Is there a table that shows how it's determined, who's charged, who's not charged, what the thresholds are?
That's a great question that comes up a lot, and we're not, that will be a policy once this passes. So if this language passes, then that gives us the, ability to bill. And then after that, we will draft a policy which will have the table or the schedule in it that will set the rates and the thresholds. In the past, when we've billed, and I recommend we continue with this, we mirror the DNR's fee schedule. So when the DNR updates what they charge for fighting fires, we update with them. That way, we're following a state agency that's been vetted and critiqued and deemed fair, so we just followed them in the past, and it seems to work. We have to tweak it a little bit because the DNR doesn't do structural firefighting, which has different resources involved, but for the most part, it's, I think, very fair.
And that policy would be voted on as well by the fire board, or is that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But that wouldn't be a unanimous decision. Policies are set aside from the joint powers agreement. We have a policy book, and that would just need to be a majority or a supermajority. That would not need to be a unanimous vote by the fire board, because it's not part of the joint powers agreement. Does that make sense?
It does.
Now, do you want to know your board's members' idea on this?
Sure.
Just looking at the changes they want to make this time around, they're not tight enough. I mean, he's asking to set ordinance, but without specific language to come back to council and have you guys approve it, and also to have it unanimous, because whatever ordinances the fire district sets in the future can interfere with any township or city's ordinance that we already have in place, and that would have to be taken care of. So the language needs to be tighter if we do decide to give the fire district the right to set ordinance. And I'm still not totally convinced that we can't bill, let's say, if a train derailed. I don't know if different language can be put in to be able to bill for a major disaster like a factory or a train derailment where the fire department ends up using 3, 4, 5 days of resources, not counting our own resources if it happened within inside the city. Those are things that need to be looked at, right? Looking at the agreement, there's a lot of flaws in it. I pointed them out. I can go through them one by one. It'd probably take me 15 minutes to go through it and kind of explain to you guys. One of the things that the agreement doesn't have is the fire district has a relief fund for the firefighters, which is great. It's a great recruiting tool. But under state statute, the fire board itself cannot have anything to do with those funds. And in our agreement, if you read it, it doesn't necessarily not make the board liable for the fire funds. It doesn't separate it, us, as the board from the relief funds. So that's one thing I think needs to be amended. I'd have to go through this and jog my memory real quick. I wanted it more focused towards a volunteer fire department. Last time I talked to you and made a few comments about being at the fire board, I realized their agreement, I think, has the word volunteer. I did find it one time, I think, in the agreement. I think it needs to be focused more towards a volunteer fire department. And the reason I'm saying this is I've seen circumstances, you can look up Sunrise Beach, Missouri, good example. I have relatives who were on that fire department as volunteers, and they ended up making it employees, and they forced out all the volunteers, and then the budget went from minimal to astronomical, where they actually had to start taxing the residents. I'd
I
like to
agree
see
with
it-
that 100% as well. I think it needs to be more specific in there. 100% on that one.
I think language needs to be changed in it better for the city's protection, because me as a board member, I actually have a lot of power. Like, I don't I could make these votes and I could probably get reprimanded for doing it, but there's nowhere to limit my power, really, what votes I can make or not make. And I think that needs to be limited.
Can you give an example on that?
This amendment. I mean, if the council wasn't aware of it, I'm sure that Al is gonna send Josie, the paperwork for the amendment, but let's say he forgot, and I didn't talk to council about it, I can make the vote and approve it. I mean,
So there's no
safe-
statutory requirement to come and report back type of thing, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
basically.
Is that one of your requirements as a councilman appointed to our board, though?
Well, see, say that again.
Is that are you required as an appointed person?
No,
on
that's what
council to represent the city at the fire board? No?
And there's no language in there, and I'm only one representative of the people, and these other four people that sit beside me should also have a say in what we do with city funds, and if we're going to do something with the fire district that is actually gonna affect the city in a major, even in in any respect, really, not minor like day-to-day business, but like amendments or setting ordinance, and that's why I was saying if we were going to set ordinance, it was only right that everybody on the fire district board talk to their boards and have it approved by their boards before they can come back and give a vote on the fire district board and say yes. Because, like I said, it could interfere with our ordinances, what you decide to set in the future or what we decide to approve.
Right. And that's, for an example, that's exactly what held us up in 2019 is, like I say, we had a verbal agreement amongst all the people at the table at the fire board.
Right.
But we didn't have it at all respective boards.
Honestly, I think it kind of it should be like that, in my eyes. I think these guys should have a little bit of say in that, especially when it could
So
affect
just-
our ordinances.
For discussion, can you explain to me what we would do different? Because it seems like we're accomplishing that today.
We are.
How would we put that in
We
writing,
are.
or what is your suggestion?
Just, okay, like I sent you, an agreement, just a mock agreement, a template. And my wording on ordinance was really easy. I mean, the fire district may adopt ordinance only by the unanimous vote and ratification by each party's governing body within 90 days. Ordinance shall comply by Minnesota statute
I like that.
47159 and other applicable laws. I mean,
So if a unanimous decision at the fire board is made, is that going to guarantee that these guys are also on board?
well, by having this language in the fire district agreement, it's my responsibility to make sure these guys are on board. Right now, it's not my responsibility, in a sense, to make sure they're on board.
So are you somewhat worried about people that maybe don't communicate with their township and they're just making executive decisions on their own type of situation?
Right.
Okay.
But that isn't the only issue I had. It's just like I said about the relief fund. In a way, right now, looking at it, if Para is never gonna probably make a mistake with the retirement fund, but let's just say they did. And one of the volunteer firefighters are thinking, I'm gonna sue them. They mess with my retirement fund. Well, they look at this agreement and it isn't really tight that the fire district isn't responsible for it too, so we get sued. So I think it needs to be a little tighter.
Have you read the bottom of page 4 and the top of page 5?
Let me look at it.
The fire district is the entity responsible for satisfying the minimum obligation for the firefighters relief association.
That's what I'm trying to say. The firefighters district cannot be responsible. It has to be done by a different entity, like Para. That's why I called her when I talked to you last night. They have to be responsible, or the fire district itself has to form a charitable, another board that is not related to the district to be able to receive and distribute funds. The fire district and the towns and the cities cannot be responsible for that pension whatsoever. It has to be done by an outside source.
By state law, they are, however,
They are.
responsible to make sure it's whole.
But I didn't really see solid language in the original contract stating that. It
States
wasn't real
right-
clear.
Third line, Minnesota statutes, chapter 69 and 42A.
What page?
Towards the top of page 5, the third line down. So maybe we should have some sort of a working session or something to
Yeah.
make sure we're all on the same page. Because I don't want you guys to not be comfortable with this, for one, but I also want everybody to be 100% educated on this. The people that are making these decisions should totally understand not only our perspective, but what is in this language, so that we aren't making a vote or a motion on something that we don't entirely, I'm not saying you don't understand this, but I just think that some things aren't being recognized here, and we want to make sure we're all up to speed on it.
It is very wordy also.
It is, and it's not language that we don't read every day.
Yeah.
We're not lawyers and attorneys.
It's
Or-
a simple agreement. That was my first thought when I read it originally. It's a simple agreement, and I like that. But it's cluttered. It's just cluttered. It's just not put together well. It's not streamlined. It has way too many words. I don't, that's why when they mentioned it, that was my first thought out of my mouth at the board meeting, that I think we should redo the whole agreement with better, more streamlined, modern language, make it up to date, easier to amend in the future. And that's why I put something together for you to kind of give you an idea of what I was at least thinking, not saying anything on the agreement that I came up with is even legal or binding, but it does match the agreement we have really close in 6 or 7 pages instead of 11. And I think it gives better governance structure. And see, we're gonna amend this, even if we amend this at the next board meeting, and I'll agree to do what we wanna do, we have to re-amend it this fall, because there's so much language in it about the Isani Firehouse and the land, and it will have to be re-amended again. And that was my point. If we're gonna do all these amendments, why don't we take a fresh look at just re-amending it all at once, streamlining it, keep the same language. I don't want to change anything. I think it's a good agreement, but maybe streamline it and make more sense, make it have a better recruitment value to it for the volunteers that are looking at this agreement and looking to come on board and be a volunteer, make it more volunteer orientated.
Okay.
Type thing?
Just a couple thoughts. One is that the plan is that we own that building in the next few months, by the end of the
Right.
year. So I would
Right.
recommend that we wait
Me
to
too.
finalize this until that purchase
Right.
is finalized, so that we don't have to make another amendment, because that's costly.
That's exactly was my point and why I went the direction I did. And I didn't really, I did convey that to the board a little bit, but I don't know if they knew exactly what I was thinking. So that's why I put something together to kind of show them what I was thinking.
Another thought, and I agree that it could be easier for people like me to read. I'm not the attorney that understands all of their legal language by any means. I'll never claim to be. However, if we don't have a lot of this wording in here that was drafted and approved by attorneys,
I agree.
we could end up on the wrong end of a lawsuit someday, which our job is to protect ourselves from.
I
So if
agree
it-
100%. And like you mentioned, I think in an email back and forth, is you would like to see an attorney look at both agreements and really see if there's any difference. If there's any language missing that one agreement, that it wouldn't spell out in the original.
Right.
If we do form a new agreement, whatever it may be.
Correct, and how much cost will we incur to make this agreement easier to read? Is it worth it?
Yes.
To spend the money to make that easier to read, or do we trust our attorneys that it's all in there and it's a good agreement and we
Well,
don't
we're-
incur all that additional time?
I agree with what you're saying, but like you said, we're gonna have to take a lot of stuff out anyway. By the time we're done with this agreement in the fall, it's not gonna look much like it does right now. It will, but we're gonna have to take a lot out of it.
I feel like the area that we're referencing about the building is
Page
maybe
10,
not,
I think it was.
too extensive. Do you remember where exactly that's at?
Page 8,
Land, yeah,
Article 9.
page 7.
9?
But I thought there was some language scattered throughout some of the other amendments that reflected back to it.
Yeah, 9A, to be exact. So I think, I don't know, but vaguely, I feel like if we were to omit paragraph A or section A, Article 9, that would take care of us
Sure.
not leasing that building, instead owning it.
Well, another thing I want to mention is, this was like you mentioned, this was a grassroots agreement. It was made between all parties when they really had the desire to pool their resources and have a good, viable fire department and make it affordable for all parties. And I think the reason that I wanted to look at another approach and maybe just redoing it is because finally, the fire district has grown up. It's gonna be its own entity 100%, once they dust their hands off of the city and the ownership and the lease of the building, and, it will be its own entity, and it needs to be treated more like that, and I think a different agreement could help do that and reflect that. That's all. I don't wanna push for a new agreement too much, but I think there's room to at least look at changing it without changing the original agreement.
So this sounds like maybe this is a discussion that the fire board should have.
Yeah,
And maybe
I
the work
gotta-
session, meeting is I think that might be a good idea. Actually dive into every section of this. I personally hate reading this stuff.
I do too.
It's so hard to read, but how do you do it otherwise? That's legal, that's just how it is. So, I'm in favor of whatever the common sense majority thinks, and I don't think there's anything horrible in here at what I've read and understood, but
Well, to be honest, and I'm just gonna tell you how my vote sits on said ordinance, and that is, I have a hard time. You guys might be able to convince me different, but we all pay for fire services. Each party is paying their share towards a fire district, and if a $3 million house inside the district burns down and it ends up taking the fire department longer than they expected and want to bill them, I'm just not for it. That's what we pay our taxes for. Now, I might be able to get on board with, hey, if a major manufacturing plant or a railroad disaster or some big major disaster that would cost over X amount of dollars of fire department time, then maybe charge, but I'm not gonna start charging $50 to go to an accident, $200 for every fire through, you know, we had that policy, I think, in the past and had to discontinue that. I think we have to have all the board members really look at that and think that, no, that is part of our responsibility. I mean, that's one of our basic things as elected officials is to provide, you know, fire, public safety, roads, and this is one of them, and they are getting charged, the residents. Just, they don't see that charge
Indirectly.
because it's part of our budget.
But is it
So-
equitable? That's the question, because if you're being negligent at your house and your house burns down, why should your neighbor pay for it? That's the argument, you know what I mean?
I would
So
have to
you'd have to see the chart. That's where I come in. Is it a reasonable, say if your house burns down and you have to pay $200, I'm sorry, but that's.
I agree, but I'll bet you, and I don't know the figures, the chief probably does, I'll bet at least 50% of house fires are accidental by some stupid
Freak
thing that-
accident,
But
yeah.
that's what insurance is for, that's why you have car insurance, I mean.
That's why your homeowner's insurance covers a portion of that for the fire. What's the name of that? I read that in one of these. There's insurance that when you have homeowner's insurance, there's a part in there that actually pays for that section because that's pretty much standard to charge a service rate, a service charge. So that's why you have home insurance. You know, it's not the taxpayer's responsibility to be the insurance for you. That's how I see it.
We used to base our fees off of that suppression payment, which
That's
was
what it's called.
$250.
Yep.
So we would bill $250, which a lot of times when I was invoicing, I would just invoice their insurance company and they would pay it with no questions asked.
Right.
The DNR, for example, if there's a fire in the right of way, they'll pay $350 for our services to fight fire in the right of way, which right now we can't bill, so.
And I don't think that's ridiculous. I mean, $200 if your house starts on, I mean, it's not like it's $20,000, you know? It's not it's obviously it's a hit, but at the same point, if we're gonna,
But you just have a person who's, you know, tried all their life, you know, does everything right. Worst case scenario, his house burns down, maybe he just lost a sibling or whatever, lost somebody in a fire, and now, insult on top of injury, they get a bill from the fire department. That's, you know, you have to look at those circumstances too.
And that's the argument, is right, that example right there. Nobody wants to kick somebody when they're down, to put it in layman's terms. That's horrible. Which is why we had a threshold of 8 hours or more. So it was, if we pumped water, we'd show up at a scene and we'd use their garden hose, or we would stomp out a small fire, or it was a false alarm, we didn't pump water, we didn't charge. But if we pumped water up to 8 hours, it was $250. We could have all of our apparatus on scene, all 35 people, and we'd charge them $250. So
I think it's reasonable.
they're getting a pretty good deal for that, on top of their taxes, correct. They do pay for the fire department to be available via their taxes. And if it's over 8 hours, that's when we started to bill pass-through costs. If we had to hire some heavy equipment to come and help us, they would pay for that cost. They would pay by the hour for the trucks and manpower.
How often does a structure fire go beyond 8 hours?
I would say once every 5 years. Not very often. They're generally 2 to 3 hours.
I'm more worried about the industrial and big stuff myself.
No, but if the intent of like the payment thing is to try and not hurt the homeowners, but then to bill the large commercial or industry, then how often does the homeowner go beyond that?
Sure.
That threshold into the deeper pricing plan?
Once
Right.
every 5 years.
Yeah. And that's on residential structure fires, you're talking about all structure fires, it's once every 5 years?
That's all.
Okay.
Very seldom a residential fire would take over 8 hours, even if it was the total loss. I couldn't see being there for 8 hours. It's the the businesses, the commercial buildings that are more time consuming.
Right.
I would rather see a higher or a lower threshold on the commercial stuff myself. I mean, if there's, you know, just say a fuel plant goes up, you know, I don't think taxpayers should be paying for that. That's kind of a cost of doing business and a risk when you're in that sort of business, you know? It's hard to push that cost onto taxpayers. So, we could have that discussion all night though, too. That's something that I think the board would have to, you know, come up with what they think is reasonable.
Car accidents are
I
another
do,
one.
I do appreciate and agree with, though, you talking about how there should be more structured language about the councils or municipalities being more informed about
I
if there
agree.
is gonna be a change to it.
Right.
Not just you as an emissary, but actually like having informed consent and the municipalities voting on.
I agree 100%. We've seen in the past with some of our committees that there have been members that were on the committees and never attended or reported back to us. There's no way for us to know, and they're voting on things, and we don't know what's going on. And I think that that is a great point to bring up. I really like that one for sure.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because in this agreement, the original, I don't believe there is wiggle room for an alternate if I didn't show up. And we as a council have an agreement that if we can't make it to a committee, that we can designate someone or ask somebody else to fill in for us.
Okay.
And I don't know if this agreement was solid enough to let that happen and have full voting rights.
We don't necessarily accept the entity's appointment of each individual. The only voting or acceptance that we do is when we appoint our chair and vice chair, secretary, and treasurer positions. We don't necessarily say, okay, we accept George, and only George can come from the city of Isani and represent Isani.
So that's on our level to decide.
I think so,
Right,
yeah.
it
Okay.
is on an honored level, but I think because the district is growing up, it should really just be set in stone. That's just another point I'm making.
Okay.
I mean, you know, Al is great. He's a great chief, and obviously he's advocating for us to save money by wanting to charge, you know, I mean, he looks at both sides of it. I've talked to him enough to know that his best interest is for everybody, but there might come a time in the future that we don't have a chief like that, and might want to go by the exact wordage of an agreement, and might be wanting to push something through that week and sees that there's an alternate there that he could just say doesn't have voting rights and get a vote to have something passed. I'm not saying the fire budget district
No,
board's
I'm
anything
following
like
you,
that, but I'm just trying
absolutely.
to come up with scenarios, just
Would
try
that
to.
not be at this level, though, where
Right.
you would have some stipulations to report back? I'm not sure how your
Well,
positions,
But if it's the JPA that would determine whether that's honored or not, it would be the JPA that would have to clarify that.
yeah, in here, I had it really clear. The fire district should be governed by a board consisting of one voting representative appointed by each party's governing body, total 7. Each party may appoint one alternate representative to vote in its absence of its primary representative. Alternates have full voting rights when acting in place of the primary representative. I just wanted to ensure that, because it wasn't ensured in the original agreement. Whether it needs to be or not, I mean, I don't know, because I'm not an attorney. I was just looking at things, and I have like 15, 20 examples like that in the agreement that I wrote up that I didn't think were covered. Insurance and liability, I mean, right now, I put in there the fire district shall not hold board members, officers, or volunteers against any claims arising from their duties. And the board shall keep insurance on the board members for, I wish I could find the exact language I used, I'm sorry here.
page
Better
5.
language, because I think once the intent of this, when they made it up, was it was brand new, and they didn't want to worry about a board member getting sued for non-willingly messing something up, whatever it may be. And so they said each individual entity is responsible for their board member. So the city of Iceni would be responsible for anything I might do, and same with the townships. And I clarified it better to say that the fire district should be responsible, because they're a separate entity than the city. I'm just representing our party on the fire district. They're a completely different entity than the city. And I thought there could be problems there if any board member in the future did something that could cause a lawsuit, and he didn't do it willfully. So,
Just separation.
yeah.
Yeah. I think these are great things that you guys should have a in-depth talk about with the fire board. I don't think, I mean, obviously with us, we have incentive to not get in a situation like that, but so do all the townships. So they're all gonna have their opinion as well.
Here's the exact language. The fire district shall indemnify board members, officers, and volunteers against any claims arising from their duties, except in cases of willful misconduct or gross negligence. Right now, the language in this agreement is the city and the townships are responsible for that part of it. And I don't know if we I have a lot of questions to ask our attorney. That's all.
Okay. Well, I think it's,
So,
go ahead.
so for now, we're not opposed to continuing.
No,
If you guys have
No.
specific requests, please forward them to George. He'll bring them to the fire board for consideration. If you would rather, or if you'd like to include me, just for some clarity and opinion, feel free
Yeah.
to reach
Okay.
out. But I'll take this as it's okay to proceed for now. Obviously, we're not voting on this by any means, but
right.
you're not 100% opposed,
Correct.
correct?
No, not at all. Matter
Awesome.
of just getting the right language and getting all the board members to agree to it. I mean, I'm not opposed to letting a fire district have ordinance at all, as long as each individual one has a unanimous vote and approved by their boards. I know it's a longer process and it's harder, but at least once you have them, they're there forever, because we can't take them away. You're your own entity, so, yeah.
Okay.
That's where I stand at.
Sounds good. Thank you, Al. I appreciate you being here and I appreciate all the input. And you as well, George. I know you did a lot of research on that stuff. There's a lot of work there, so I appreciate that. Let's go on to E6, Fairway Greens North Park build. And we probably only have about 10 minutes left, so we have a few minute break. Do you think we can? Okay,
Well, thank you.
okay.
I didn't know I was gonna get hijacked.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The City of Iceni advertised the project for quote, and after receiving none, put the project out to our contractors list and received one quote from DW Companies for the groundwork for the park. Staff met with DW Companies to discuss what the city would do for the project as well as what DW Companies would do. Staff is recommending approving highlighted areas of the quote. City Public Works will work on constructing the remaining park items throughout the year as time allows, with an anticipated opening date of June 2026. The updated costs for the materials are provided. Funds will be allocated as previously discussed from the park dedication funds with a current estimated balance of $360,000.
I also just want to state that the trail option that we discussed with Public Works staff as well was in on the conversation throughout all of this. And so is the Lime Egg Trail option. And so we did highlight that we wanted DW to do the ramp so that it's done correctly and up to the standards that are required, but that Public Works would then install the lime egg for that trail. So we don't have that cost tonight. I know Matt might be able to estimate a little bit, no? We do lime egg a lot, but he said it'd be more affordable than what is listed there, obviously, because it includes their work as well. So we're just really want discussion on it, on all the items. I know Public Works staff and Josca worked really hard on turning in quotes and searching a lot of places to find our best deals on a lot of these, the materials and Public Works. I don't know, Matt, you can speak to how you think it would work. We gave a deadline of June 2026 for the park to be completed, to give a lot of time for them to work on building all of the items.
So I did have a question here. I see the concrete trail options subcategory, removal of existing curb at connection to the street and install concrete ped ramp. I know you just discussed that. So it's basically costing $35,500.
Sorry, it won't cost that much money. We just want that piece of it done. So we need that done in concrete. And so I don't know
Okay.
what that cost is, but it's not $35,000.
That's,
It's actually the $15,500. It's included in there. It should have been that one highlighted below it, the lime egg trail option. And so with us doing that work, it'll be less than $15,500 for all of the trail work. Yes, we just highlighted the wrong one, the incorrect line.
Okay.
So, sorry about that.
okay. So we don't have a price though for, the removing the curb and installing the ped ramp, or is that?
We don't have the official price of it. That's the part that Matt had stated he wanted them to still do. So we
Okay.
didn't ask them to pick that out, but.
Because I know that the prices on those are usually very high. Is that something that we've ever looked to? I mean, Public Works doesn't do it now, but is there a jig that you can get so that we could do our own, like even for this property that we just talked about on Main Street? Wouldn't it be a lot easier if Public Works just had some sort of jig that we could use to actually, just to form the ped ramp ourselves instead of paying a contractor a bunch of money to do it? I mean, I don't know if that's, then we could do it at all our parks, at any place we ever wanted, we could do it ourselves. Is that something that's ever been discussed?
Mayor and council, not to my knowledge that has been discussed.
Because
With me around anyway.
I mean, I'm very confident our Public Works guys could do something like that, some concrete, if you had the correct equipment to do it. I don't know if maybe that's a Jason question. Perfect time.
Matt, did we not do that with Jason's assistance at the police department?
I know that we did a little bit of that with Jason's assistant at the police department, but that was already, hi Jason, almost set up for it. So the curb had already been cut there. We just did that sidewalk along the back of the curb. I know we did talk about it when we were gonna do something at the post office and the meat market. That was a little bit, maybe Jason can chime in on that. When we did that, it was gonna be like right up to their door. So
we're talking about ped ramps, and I wondered if there was a way that, we constantly see these, even just in the meeting earlier, before you were here, we were talking about there's no ped ramp access in this one spot. Well, if we had some sort of a jig or tool to do it ourselves, I'm very confident that our Public Works guys could do a ped ramp. Is that something that's, like, in the industry? Is there just a jig you could just make, or just a trowel type thing, or like a swing, or, I mean, I've seen some ped ramps where it literally just looks like they just took a 2x4 and swung it and called it a day.
So ped ramps have so many little nuances to do it legally ADA.
Right.
I would say Public Works has the skill to be able to do it. It's the knowing all the little nuances, where either we have one of my inspectors there that knows where to set everything, and then Public Works would be able to do it. I think that's reasonable. But the actual act of meeting all the cross slope requirements and landing sizes and all those things, we'd need somebody that knows all that training before we're gonna go into the business of building those, I think.
I just see a lot of bids for those, and they're extremely expensive. And I'm trying
For
to,
that reason, the amount of certification that you need to
Okay.
have and the liability to have done it wrong and have somebody have a problem is the cost.
Sure.
And so,
you know, and like I say, to have one of my inspectors there that does have that training, or myself, to say, yep, like this, and then these guys form it up, you know, I think that could be doable. When you're crossing a street or ramping onto a street, you gotta get those truncated domes put in there properly too. Same deal, you know, getting our hands on them and putting them in right is a legal thing as opposed to just kind of putting down a surface, you know?
Okay. What do those truncated domes do exactly? Those are the things with like all the red dot, or all the dots, right?
Yep, they're a detectable warning surface for the blind for the most part.
Okay. All right. So that's probably a no-go. Or it could be possible, but it's not easy.
No, honestly, you know, my inspectors have the training, so
Okay.
like, we could give it a go. I mean,
So,
whatever Public Works wants to attempt, and we could try and do that kind of teamwork thing. I don't know the exact one we're talking about, but each one is unique. It's
Okay.
strangely difficult for the, you know, size of the, you know, thing that we're talking about, like,
Okay.
there's a lot to it.
Could we maybe try that on this one and see, I mean, if we don't have, I was just seeing the 35,500, I was thinking there's no way we're paying that much for a ped ramp. I would rather our guys spend an hour or two of engineer time and do it themselves to save, I mean, even if it's $15,000, I don't know what it would be.
You're talking a concrete trail option.
No, we're just talking about just the ped ramp, because your ped ramp has to be concrete, correct?
I don't have that.
The ramp and the landing need to be concrete.
Okay, would it be possible to ask for Public Works to try it? I don't know. I mean, that's just a small part of this, but I'm just trying to save some money, and maybe we'll have a better long-term option for all these ped ramps that seem to be in every project.
I do believe my staff is qualified to do the work. They can pour the concrete. There is a lot on this project that Public Works has taken on, which is why I asked Stephanie to give me a lot of time to do
Sure.
it. So do I think we're talented enough to do it? Yes, I think we're talented enough to do it.
Okay. I think we should give it a shot, myself, on that. As far as, do we need direction on all of these amenities tonight, or are we just looking for just direction on the bid? Or what's the thought process on that?
Yes, can we get direction so we can bring it forward?
Okay. What are your guys' thoughts?
I guess I would like to know what the exact amount that DW would be awarded, or the quote.
So we would be awarding the $30,000 for site work, as well as transporting all of the dirt that we have from the previously removed berm from Bluebird Park to this park to create a new berm for the slide hill. And then the $5,200 for turf restoration, and then the additional cost of the concrete ped ramp, if we're gonna try that ourselves, and it's just those two other numbers. So it's
Okay.
$35,200. And then there is some boulder placement that we have estimated on the back end, and we're getting quotes from a few people, but this is an estimation. And that is, sorry, I lost that sheet.
Okay.
That's at the very end. The 5,100 and 100, or $5,117 quote is what an estimate is for us to have the big boulders placed on that hill. We just want to make sure it's done correctly and in place so that we don't have them collapsing.
Okay.
So we want somebody to do that.
So I guess for the sake of time right now, I think we should maybe, get a consensus on going ahead with this DW quote for the $35,200, and then maybe afterwards we have a discussion on each one of these specific items, including the rocks that you just mentioned, if that sounds okay.
Yeah, that's fine, however you guys want to go about it.
Am I missing a page? Because I have nothing on mine that says 35,002.
It's 30,000 plus 5,200.
Oh, okay, you're adding these two together.
Yep.
You know, why do we have to do the turf restoration when this is basically a rustic park where the kids are gonna be running around wherever they want, trampling through the weeds and,
It's because of sandburs, like, to be frank. Like, so if we don't have a turf restoration area just surrounding the park, like, we're assured that we'll have a lot of sandburs in there for kids and wood ticks. And so we want to at least have an area around the path where we can have the turf established, so we don't have to worry about that.
isn't that part of being a kid? Jeez. All right. I mean,
Jeff or Nick?
I have no thoughts on it. You brought up a lot of stuff. I'm comfortable moving ahead.
With the DW stuff that we
The
talked
site work
about?
and turf restoration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good?
Yep.
Alrighty, well, we can move ahead with that, and then we will, I'll take a motion to recess, and we will come back to each item on this list. I think that's gonna be a fairly long discussion, after council, if there's a motion to recess.
Motion to recess.
second.
Motion by Councilmember Peterson, second by Councilmember Holmgren. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are recessed, and we will pick up city council in about 4 or 5 minutes.